Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone had a nice afternoon lunch break. Welcome to Road Tested, Real Stories of Advocacy That Worked and How You Can Get There Too. Today we are going to have a few pit stops along our journey. We're going to share a little bit about the federal landscape. We're going to have a moderated discussion. We're going to have some audience Q&A and participation, and then we will end with a call to action. Today's participants are myself. My name is Elise Swash. I'm a vice president at Penn Hill Group. We are a government relations firm that works with COABE to support its federal advocacy on funding and policy priorities. I'm also joined with my colleague, Juliette Rhino. Together, we are supporting COABE's work, and you can find us anywhere around the conference, and also we'll have time tomorrow morning at the COABE booth to share some more information and answer questions you might have. We also have an all-star panel this afternoon. We have Erin Vibornik, who's the initiatives director at COABE. We have Heather Sharp, who's the 2025 COABE Outstanding Local Excellence in Advocacy Award winner and West Virginia SAFE Fellow. And we have the Honorable Michelle Davis. She's an Indiana State Representative and Adult Education Director at Central 9 Career Center. So we are very lucky to have them joining us today. To get us started, just to give us a little bit of a perspective on where things sit in the federal landscape, which is the work that we do, Juliette and I do to help support COABE nationally. We want to share with you that, we've just come off a year of a lot of challenges. There was efforts to eliminate funding for adult education, both in the president's proposed budget and in what the House of Representatives, U.S. House of Representatives, proposed for funding. They wanted to eliminate adult education funding. Then we faced the withholding of funding last July. For nearly a month, those funds were withheld, meaning that planning and other efforts to get adult education programs situated in states were held up. And there was an effort which continues to move aspects of adult education from the U.S. Department of Education over to the Department of Labor. These things all presented some level of challenges, obviously the elimination of funding being first and foremost. And that's where COABE's advocates stood up, took charge, and were just awesome in letting Capitol Hill know that this could not stand. There were up to 30,000 letters that were sent. There were calls, meetings, all up to the Hill to say that funding needed to be released last July. And then there were efforts to get new members of Congress to sign on to the annual funding request letters. We had 13 new members sign last year. In September, we had 130 COABE members come to the Hill. And in the end of the day, at the end of July, the funding was released. And at the end of the fiscal year, the funding for adult education was maintained at level funding. These were all victories that were secured because of the advocates and your advocacy efforts. And I would love to be able to say that things are hunky-dory now that we're in the new fiscal funding year efforts, but we are still in that place where there are challenges. The president just released his budget for fiscal year 27, which is the budget year that starts in October at the federal level, and that proposed to eliminate adult education once again. So there have been funding letters that have been circulated in the House and the Senate. The House letter, we were able, with all of your help, to get 10 new signers. And the Senate letter is circulating right now. So we will have advocacy efforts where you can tell your senators to sign this letter. And then just recently, a reauthorization bill was introduced by House Republicans that will be considered in committee, in the Education Committee next week, to renew the Workforce Opportunity and Innovation Act, WIOA. This is where adult education sits in federal law. There had been a bipartisan effort that almost became law in 2024 in December That effort got scuttled at the very last minute. And so now there are this new effort to try to reauthorize WIOA. But instead of being a bipartisan process, this is a partisan process, meaning it only has the support of Republicans right now. And the reason for it is even though it includes a lot of what COABE wants to see in a reauthorization bill stemming from the bipartisan Adult Education Works Act, which has been introduced over several Congresses by Indiana's own Senator Todd Young, a Republican, and Rhode Island Senator Jack Reed, a Democrat. They introduced this bipartisan Adult Education Works Act. Many of those provisions were included in this reauthorization in 2024 that almost became law. This new bill, this House Republican bill, includes many of those provisions that COABE cares about, but it does something that is the reason why it's not getting support by Democrats, in that it moves all of adult education from the U.S. Department of Education over to the Department of Labor, continuing the efforts by the current president to eliminate the Department of Education. Democrats oppose that effort. They want to see a continued role for the Department of Education in all sorts of education. And in this case, for adult education, they believe that there is a educational literacy component that might be lost if it was all moved over to the Department of Labor. So that bill will not go anywhere right now. Hopefully, at some point, again, there will be a bipartisan effort, and that will include all of what COABE is looking for in terms of changes and updates and strengthening adult education. So we want you to be on the lookout for developments on all of these fronts. And the Public Policy Pulse that comes out once a month, Connects that comes out once a week, and then on social media. So that's a little bit of the landscape, just to give you a sense of the context of some of the things that we're going to be discussing in our road-tested panel. And with that, I'm going to just get underway and start lobbing some questions to our all-star panel. So, Heather, I'm going to start with you first. You've been recognized for taking bold, self-initiated steps in advocacy, including the time you literally ran in heels to catch U.S. Senator Shelley Moore Capito to advocate for the release of federal adult education funding last July. What was the moment that sparked your decision to step into advocacy?
Thank you. So honestly, the whole advocacy, I always had a passion for adult education, first of all. So it became more of a realization that we all had to do something to, enhance our programs and our funding. And then it really hit hard. I became the safe advocate for West Virginia, and Aaron was, we were all doing really well and learning. And then July 2025 hit, and the pivotal year of our funding was held by the government, and that was the realization that we could absolutely lose everything. So on my own terms, I felt like I had a voice, and I wanted to do everything on my part that I could do, and I wanted to gather everyone in the community and in our programs and our instructors and just make a difference on that. But I had went on vacation, and I seen during vacation that the funding was held, and I came back to work on that Monday, and I heard that Senator Shelley Moore Capito was 10 minutes from my classroom, and I just picked everything up, and I was like, I got to go find her. I got to go talk to her. So I literally was in heels, and she was on a bike trail in a ribbon cutting ceremony, and I knew that the important part about Senator Capito was she was on the Appropriations Committee for Education, so she was important. So I was going to make this happen. So I when I got there, I wanted to hold up the integrity of our program, first of all, because there was a lot of protesters for the Big Beautiful Bill, and I wanted her to see that what we do and what our students and our adult learners, the important work that we do is important. And I skewed the room, and I seen the important people, and I started talking to them, and it became a relationship. Todd Gunner, who is her lead man, he walked with me. It was hot. I gave him a baby wipe. We got up to the top. We hung out, and on the way down, he walked with me with Senator Capito, and I literally just started talking about our success stories and our students and what we did. I didn't have a planned moment. I didn't have a planned anything, I did have the adult COAB toolkit in my head. Because everything that we had been advocating and the letters, and I had data in my head, and it was just, I was spitting it off. And Senator Capito looked at me and said, Todd, get her number, get her information. She had no idea at that moment that she literally, our funding was being held. She went back to D.C. She encouraged the senators to sign the letter, and within days, our funding was released. So it takes one moment, one action, be prepared, and advocate.
Thank you so much, Heather. That really was, I think, a pivotal moment for us in trying to get that funding released last July. So, Michelle, I'm going to turn over to you. From your perspective as both a legislator and adult education leader, what does effective advocacy in support of adult education look like to you? What approaches stand out for you?
So, thank you all for being here. So before I became a state legislator, I've been an adult education director for 15 years now. So before I took the role on as a state legislator, as my director role, I don't know what made me do this, but I just started reaching out to my state representative, my state senator, and then our Congress folks. And I invited them to Central 9 on a night where I knew we would be, where we had a lot of enrollment, we had a lot of people like moving and shaking and things coming and going, and asked them to spend an hour with me. So I spent like 15 minutes just chatting with them, kind of like she said, building a relationship, and then we went around and walked the hallways. I did that with my state rep, my state senator, and one of my congressmen. And really, I don't think me talking to them got anything. It was when we were walking the hallways and they were stopping in, they were asking questions, they engaged with the students in our classes. We have a lot of training classes as well, so they wanted to see our welding class, they wanted to see our CNA class and our labs with our adults in there working. So I don't know why I did that in the first place, but that was before I was a state legislator. Then when I became a state legislator, the same thing, it makes sense. If someone calls me, it usually goes to one of my assistants. If someone emails me, it usually goes to one of my assistants. But when I have a face-to-face with someone, I can remember that, and it's meaningful to me. And again, the face-to-face is great, but me interacting with the students in adult ed is what really grabs my attention, where I can see where it is transforming their life. Like I can talk to the teacher, I can hear the stories, but when I can actually interact with who it is benefiting and how their families benefit, that's when it's most impactful to me. So I know we like to say, hey, go make those phone calls. Hey, go send 1,000 emails. Well, those all go straight to my assistant. And my assistant at the end of the day will say, I'll say, well, he gives me a weekly update, and he'll say, hey, Rep Davis, you got 100 phone calls today on adult ed, and you got 50 emails. Okay, well, I didn't look at one of them or hear one of them, and that's just the reality of it. But when he says, hey, Washington Township wants to come and meet with you, they want you to meet with some students, and I spend 15 minutes with them, that is what gets me really engaged. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Erin, COAB does a tremendous amount of behind-the-scenes work. What ongoing efforts or partnerships would you want the field to know more about?
Yeah, so a little bit of my history with COAB, apart from having been a member for a long time. My first conference was 2015 in Denver, when I was just 3 years old. but I really got started in advocacy through the State Advocates for Adult Education Fellowship program that provided training and support, but more than that, it really provided that confidence that I needed. And what I realized is that we all have that ability to be strong advocates. We are now in year 6. So that is a really powerful partnership that we have with our advocates, who are now over 200 strong over these past 6 years. And then kind of going off of that, our State Association Leadership Institute and our State Association Business Executive Roundtable, which includes the people who work on the people who work for the state association, like the executive directors and the staff, and then SALI, the State Association Leadership Institute, which includes board members from state associations, because really empowering those states to have a unified voice is incredibly beneficial, and acknowledging nobody knows more about that state than the people who live there. Nobody's going to be able to speak to the impact of adult education to a legislator like the individuals who live in that state and know how to talk adult ed, right? Know how to connect as a Hoosier. And then additionally, COABE is continuing to have meetings with congressional offices and officials of the Department of Education and Labor, and then gathering feedback from the field, because acknowledging that not every voice is represented at the table, and we want those voices represented. So sending information out to the field, asking for feedback, reading every email that comes through, and just trying to ensure that we are asking the field, what is it that you are seeing? What is it that is maybe not translating from policy to practice? And what do you see as the change that needs to happen?
Thank you so much, Erin. Back to Heather. What challenges or struggles have you faced along your advocacy journey, and how did you navigate them?
So in the beginning, when I became an advocate, especially for the SAFE, I felt confidence has always been, an ongoing process. But at first, when you're standing in front of high-stakes legislators and you want to have them actually be engaged with you, I was intimidated at first. It can be intimidating because I want you to hear me. You really need to listen to me. I know you need all these people, but this is about me today. It's about us, right? But anyway, with that being said, it was intimidating at first. So, and the opportunities, sometimes they were impromptu. So you have to be prepared. You have to know your stuff. Use your toolkit. The more you advocate, the more you know. So the way I navigated through all of that was I was prepared. I showed up. I just started talking to anybody and everybody, and it built my confidence to overcome that. And honestly, they want to hear the student stories. So I start making friends wherever I was at, a ballpark, anywhere, and I would take them to the Senate and our state capitol. I would have them to have an adult education session at interns. We went to community events, everything that we possibly could. The student stories are the most impactful that you can show, the transformative part of our work that we do. And that was how I began, following through with that. I just kept being consistent, and consistency is the way you advocate, because the proof is in the pudding, as my mama said.
That's really helpful, knowing about those, how you can share those student stories to really personalize and bring that human element. Michelle, you talked about how having those one-on-one meetings can be very impactful for you and the work that you're doing. What other things do you wish adult education advocates would do more often to strengthen their influence when advocating?
Very good question. A couple things more often. I wish I would get invited more often to I don't need to go to adult education programs because I understand it. But I wish my colleagues would get invited to more adult education graduations, to just a class, to visit a classroom, to visit the program itself, and not just to talk to the administrator, not just to talk to the teachers. Like we've all said, I need to talk to the students to see how our dollars are really impacting them. Because then I can go back, or then my colleagues can go back to their caucus members when we're having debates on whether we should keep the funding or not. Then it's a better educated conversation, because I can have a colleague say, well, I went to this one adult education event, and Henry told me this story about Henry, his failure, and then he came to an adult ed program. He found so much success, and then they teamed him up. He got a job, and now he's able to get an apartment on his own. When I have colleagues in my caucus, 5 or 6 of them telling these stories to other caucus members, it's impactful, and that's when the needle moves for us. So I wish that you invite us more, and it doesn't have to be anything big. Just invite us to something, because we want people to like us. We want people to know us, because we need votes to get reelected. So it kind of goes both ways. You need us for your funding, but we also need you to like us, to then say, hey, you should vote for Michelle Davis. She really likes adult ed. She's going to help you, or whomever it is. So if you invite us, we will come. Well, we should come. If we're a good legislator, we should come, and then that kind of goes both ways with that. So invite us more often and give us a story. Let us talk to someone who's going to give us a story like that I can go back and tell my colleagues or my caucus members when we're debating it, that, hey, this is how it impacted Henry's life and Henry's family. That why should we take funding away from that kind of thing?
Yeah, leaving that impression, like that 1 or 2 nuggets that you could then have it stick in the mind of the legislator is like very critical.
Can I add one more thing real quick?
Yes, please.
And then, because now we're friends, so I can invite you when something comes to the House floor or the Senate floor. I have a contact, and I can be like, hey, Jennifer, can you come to this committee hearing on this legislation? We're friends, so now I have a connection, and then you can tell the story or the impactfulness of it, and it's not so awkward, and I have an expert out there that I can reach out to.
Yeah, because that connection goes both ways, right? Because you, as the adult education advocate, you are the expert in your field, and you're advocating for it with a legislator, and then the legislator can look back to you as that expert. And so it's a very good round, a circular cycle that really helps. Erin, I want to have you talk a little bit about the tools that COABE helps advocates to succeed. And what's your vision for how the field can use these resources to strengthen their advocacy and expand their impact?
Yeah, so what I have heard now from both sides is that having students share their stories is incredibly impactful. Bringing legislators to programs and having students talk to them. And I was an ESL instructor for 15 years. So I know if I were to impromptu ask some students to share their stories, it doesn't matter how many times they had shared it with me, having somebody new there, it might, make them nervous. It would make anybody nervous. So one of the things that COABE does provide is the COABE Student Ambassador Training, where we actually walk students through how to tell their story, how to marry that story with data, right? Because while we are the experts in our field, they are the experts of their experiences. And when they can share that with confidence and in a compelling way, it makes all of the difference. And what we've seen is that every student who comes through the ambassador training, they're already a leader, right? They chose to become an ambassador. They have that fire in them. They have that story. Just like many advocates, what they really need is the confidence, right? Someone to say, okay, yes, you've got your ambassador pin, your certificate. We now have ambassador cards they can keep in their wallet as a reminder of the power of their voice. So that is one piece that, as you're thinking about how to engage your learners, we have that built out, and we're here to help with that. We also, include lots of toolkits on our advocacy website, which is coabe.org/advocacy. Those are updated as things happen. We also have a document of 15 different talking points that include data, like peer-reviewed data to support it. Now, you might have your own talking points. Fantastic, right? The more detailed you can be, the more local, the more specific to the person's district you're talking to, great. But if you're wondering, where do I start? Or I heard that literacy, like a parent's literacy affects, is the greatest indicator of a child's academic success, even more than socioeconomic status or neighborhood. But I don't know where that, I heard it, but where is it? Our talking points have that information there for you. And then, as Elise had mentioned, COABE connects on a weekly basis. Our monthly public policy pulse, LinkedIn, email blasts. We're just really trying to ensure that everybody has an opportunity to advocate in the way that works for you. And as you saw today with the QR code, we have multiple 3-click campaigns to make it easy for you to take that first step, right? And hopefully that's not the last step. Hopefully it's a 3-click campaign and a personalized email and a phone call. And if you're local, a knock on the door saying, hi, hey, I contacted you 5 different ways, just making sure, just following up. And in just a bit, we will share one that helps you to request that your senators sign on to the FY27, federal fiscal year 27, adult ed funding letter.
Thank you. Heather, you've heard a little bit about Erin's description here, some of COABE's resources. Can you share which has been the most valuable to you and how you have combined your own personal initiative with the tools that COABE has offered in order to level up your advocacy?
Yes, so COABE definitely incredibly has a wonderful toolkit, and I've used that very, very much because it has all kinds of things from data to talking points to how to engage your legislators appropriately. Combining those initiatives with the toolkit and your personal initiative has led to so many opportunities and opened so many doors for me that led to bigger doors that, even brought a meaningful relationship with a senator that, it's not only a professional, it's now personal. I've done many things with her team, and she keeps in contact with me, which has led me to other legislators in our state, which has helped me. And just like she was explaining, they want you to come and visit, and they'll invite you, and then that opens another door. It's all about conversation and respect and showing the impact of your students. It truly is, and it's impactful for everyone in the vicinity of that. So using that toolkit, because even though it might be overwhelming at first to advocate, if you just go in there and just start reading and seeing, and just even the letters or just anything on there. And Erin is just such a wonderful mentor anyway, and I've learned a lot from her this year. So I've just been really blessed, and I think that that's just amazing how COABE stays on top of it. They always update it. If I need a number, and they get impressed about numbers, they like numbers. So yeah. So, and you know what? I know this might sound cliche, but in my legislative talk, sometimes I'm like, you know what? We're raising taxpayers. We're contributing back to our economy. You're making some self-sufficient individuals. They love it. They listen. It's just a hype. So, thank you.
Michelle, what is one practical thing that you think can build stronger ongoing relationships with, that advocates can do to develop and build stronger ongoing relationships with their state legislators?
Well, I think Heather has knocked it out of the park, so kudos to you. I think everything we've said, I think the most impactful thing when I hear, if it's something that I don't know about, is when I hear who it's actually impacting. So again, hearing from the student, the adult education student, and how it impacts their lives. And we do like data, because we like to be able to say, hey, we're funding an adult education program in Indiana where we are a national leader in moving adults through our systems or getting them in gainful employment. We like to be able to say that, like our state is actually doing that. We're good at what we're doing, so our dollars are going, like she said, we're raising taxpayers. We're raising people out of, I'm gonna say the funk or the poverty that they've been in, and we're helping them move into becoming good citizens and taxpayers that are bettering their lives. So I like to hear from who it's actually impacting, and then data is always nice so we can always spit something out on how many more people we employed or we helped employ. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Thank you. Erin, COABE's advocacy success depends on growing the number of engaged voices. What can those in the audience do this month to engage new partners and bring new advocates into the movement?
Well, I'm going to go back to that student ambassador training because right now, and the reason I was a few minutes late is, so we have over 400 trained student ambassadors from across the country. 51 of those student ambassadors are here right now, downstairs on the first floor, learning together, leading together, and they are among 150 others who I am completely confident are going to be reaching out to become ambassadors in this upcoming month. These are the learners who said, yes, I'm going to go to a national conference. I am a leader. I am going to foster those leadership skills because I want to connect with others who can make a change. And I wore waterproof mascara today because if you're down there, you're guaranteed to cry. And if you want to hear the stories of the ambassadors, if you want to hear how they've learned to tell their stories, we do have 2 morning sessions tomorrow, 2 ambassador panels, where you can actually hear those stories. You can connect to ambassadors. You can ask them questions about their experiences. And really bringing adult learners alongside us, right? Because we are partners in this work. Also, connecting with your state association. If you have one, state associations are mainly volunteer-run associations that are always looking for engaged members who have diverse skills that they can use to help with advocacy. And maybe that is social media. Maybe you have been going to town on social media, resharing what COABE posts, sharing your own program data. Reach out to your state association and say, hey, I'd love to help with this. Graphic designing, it takes a village to make a difference, and we're constantly trying to adapt to an ever-changing landscape and to figure out through trial and error, what is going to reach this legislator? What is going to really speak to Michelle? How can I pull her in? And then learning, it's going there and it's inviting her to programs. Okay, now we've built that relationship. So there is no magic formula, but staying engaged, and any one step you can take is a step forward.
Thank you so much, Erin. That concludes the portion where I get to ask questions, but now we want to open it up to the room and to those on our who are listening in the hybrid room. We want to hear your questions, so please wait for the microphone if you can.
Hi, thank you so much. This is really valuable information. I'm curious about what is the best, there's sort of, in a way, what's happening at the federal level with ABE being sort of pushed into workforce is kind of also happening in the state level. And I'm wondering, what are the best ways, or what are sort of the compelling ways to advocate for ABE staying within, Department of Education's? What are the really sort of important points that support, situating AB and maintaining it within the Department of Education structure versus kind of pushing it into workforce?
Interesting question. I'm in Indiana, and we have already moved from Department of Education into Department of Workforce Development. We did that, I must say, almost 15 years ago, 14 or 15 years ago. And scary at first, but it's actually been very good for us. We haven't lost the component of the education piece of it. That has stayed very high on our performance evaluations and how we get our funding through the state. So even though it seemed like we were moving towards workforce development, which I do think we want our adults to gain workforce skills and certifications, but they also need to get the education piece as well. And I think in Indiana we've done a great job of combining those two with, I think you guys do too, probably IETs, integrating our education and training. So even though that was right when I was getting into adult education, I think it was a very scary time for adult ed, but I think in Indiana it's worked out really well for us.
I can just say that if you look at the landscape of how adult ed federal funding and state funding flows, what agency it flows through, it is very diverse. If you're curious about how to find that information, if you go to the NASDAE, NASDAE website, that's the state association, the collection of state directors, you'll be able to look at their state directory and where each state director is situated, like in what state agency, because I think it really comes down to how the agencies themselves are interacting and functioning as to whether it is what kind of concern it might be.
I could just add too, every state, there's lots of different models in terms of how adult education, where it sits and how it works. I think the concern would be that if they, at the federal level, move everything over to the Department of Labor and then lose that aspect of adult ed, that's not what's contemplated right now with the interagency agreement. It's just the management, like the funding mechanism is over at the Department of Labor, but the expertise and the policy and the accountabilities remain at the Department of Education. I think there's a way to coexist as long as it's filtered through. Because what we have heard in a lot of different states or localities is that there isn't a seat where adult education has in the workforce system. And if you don't have that voice of adult education tracked all the way through, it doesn't really matter what happens at the federal level. It almost matters more what happens at your state level and your local level. And it may differ. You may have a state overall where it has a great system and it works well in the cities, but maybe not in the rural areas or vice versa. We want to make sure the law, the Workforce Opportunity Innovation Act, WIOA, is situated in such a way as that it allows for state flexibility, allows for local flexibility, but still requires adult education to be having a voice. Because without that voice, you've lost the whole education component and it becomes just workforce.
My question is for Michelle. So considering the fact that it's probably more likely that we're going to meet with one of the staffers rather than the legislator directly, and also considering how much you've talked about saying something that really makes a strong impact, like making a personal connection with them and that kind of thing, that's not going to, I imagine at least, your staffers can't relay every single thing. Oh, the person I met with went to the same high school as you. They're probably not going to mention that, right? So do you have any other suggestions when we're meeting with a staffer, what we can do that will make it to you?
That's a good question. So I would hope at a state level that you would not that you would be able to meet with your state legislator, your House rep or your state senator. I would hope at that's the level I'm at, and I don't send my staffers to meetings. I attend the meetings. So I would, and I think most of my colleagues at the State House here in Indiana, we do that. So are you talking state level or federal level, or either? Okay, I think at federal level, you're more likely to meet with a staffer, yes. I found that I feel like at the federal level, staffers have a lot more influence than what you think over the federal folks. At the state level, I would hope that you would not be meeting with a staffer. I hope that your state legislator should be able, in my opinion, should be able to show up and have conversations with you. That would be my take. The other thing I would say that I made a note, if you don't care real quick, is to get us out of session. Don't try to, or it's preferably best to meet with me when I'm not in session. Meet with me when I call it off season because I'm in athletics. So off season, meet with me, and it's way easier to get on my calendar. I mean, we are only in session from January to the end of April on long sessions. So I have summer and fall and early winter that it's way easier to get me for 15, 20, even an hour than during session. During session, my time is very limited. So that's kind of a key thing when you're meeting with someone. Think about what their schedule looks like and when they don't have to go to the floor for votes or when they're, I call it off season.
Just a quick note on the federal level. There's always a recess. It's not like just going to school, you get a recess to go out and play in the yard. That's what they call it when the senators or House members are back in their state or district. And those are the opportunities that you can use. Usually it's August and April around spring break, and there's a Thanksgiving week, and around the holidays in December. Use those opportunities to invite your federal legislators to come see your programs, because that is when they'll be home to do those kind of visits. Now with, since COVID and there's a lot of, virtual meetings, you can get meetings now. You don't have to necessarily fly to Washington, although we would love to have you come to Washington for Flood the Hill in September, to actually get that experience of meeting with your federal legislators and their staff. But you could request a meeting and get that virtually, even when the members are back in Washington. So that's a federal perspective, just to give the other side of that.
Any other questions?
I was also just gonna note though, like where we all have the same, like our Congress all has the same recess, and those pieces at the state level, state legislatures look very different. So definitely look at the calendars that are posted on your state legislature's websites, because they will post, at least for Illinois, it's like a PDF calendar of when they're in session. And then right? Then session might go a little bit later or might get out a little bit earlier, but that gives you like those key dates when you're like, okay, they're not in Springfield, right? My legislator is back up by me, and I could walk by his office, or like maybe when I'm walking my dog, as I'm walking past his house, I can say, hey, and by the way, no. I'm in a small town, so we chatted. He asked where I lived. We connected because he used to know the people who lived in my house. He'd been in my house before I had moved there. He shared where his house was. It was over 100 years old, so I complimented like the upkeep because I know that's tough. And then we chatted, So I promise. I'm not stalking.
I just want to say one little thing too. Not really stalking, just saying Google. So you can Google your senator and like just see what kind of activities they've been doing recently. And I did that often to see where my senators were, And then I called and I made friends with the staffers. And then they send me their email. I send them a Christmas card. And then I talk to them. And I make that personal, not just kind of, not really hustling, if that makes sense, but making that connection. And then I was able, like with Todd or even with Mimi, with Senator Justice, they're like, oh, will you come into the Christmas at the Greenbrier? I'm like, yes, I am. So, I mean, you just make that connection. It just takes 1 minute to Google. I mean, find them. They like you.
I think we had a question back here.
My question is about the staffers. So you're saying many times you're, coordinating directly with them. What's the turnaround time? Like how long are they in position with a representative? You build that relationship with them and then they move.
Well, I can talk about at the state level in Indiana. I've had the same legislative assistant for 3 years. So I've kind of found that typical in Indiana. I have a press secretary who I've had for 5 years. So I haven't had much turnaround. Our senators, our state senators are like that too, where the legislative assistants stay, and we must pay them pretty good. I don't know that part. Now at the Congress level, somebody else might know more than me on that one. Yeah.
I think for your typical House of Representatives office, the staff there is typically younger and they typically turn over more quickly. In your senator's office, they are typically going to stay around a little bit longer. Not as long as I did. I worked for the same senator from Rhode Island, Senator Jack Reed, for 25 years. Not everyone does that kind of tour of duty. But, I think even if it does turn over quickly, that just gives you another opportunity. Like maybe you had an awesome relationship with the one staffer who is no longer there, or maybe you didn't. But it still gives you an opportunity to say, hey, I had this wonderful relationship with this staffer. She's no longer there. I'm hoping maybe, you could see me as a resource. I want to provide you with some information. I want to ask the member to do this or that. You can use these as opportunities if they do change over.
Yeah, and it is. I've noticed that sometimes they're changing between offices, so they're still on the Hill. I built a relationship with a congressional staffer from Illinois, and then she emailed me and said, "Hey, I just want to let you know I'm now going to be working for a congressperson in Georgia." And I was like, no. But then it also gave me the opportunity to say, okay, like, that's great. I know people in that district, so let me connect you. And then I was able to kind of pass that relationship on and then work to rebuild a relationship with that office. So it does pay off to build those relationships, even if they're moving around. You never know where they're going and how it could actually build a new relationship, either for you and your state and your program, or potentially for a different state.
I have one talking point too. I wanted to mention, this was given to me from a staffer at the Congress. You can call their staffing offices at all of your different states, and you can request a state flag, which is a beginning of a talking point. So I just wanted to recommend that. Yes, and an American flag. So you can do this. Well, they connect with you. Where do you need it? Where do you want it? So I was able to help a few high schools out, a few adult education classes. It was a great talking point. It makes connection, and that way you're like, oh, I'm with adult ed, and we're da-da-da-da. So I just want to let you know that. On a federal level.
Can I? Okay. So another thing that I've done as a state representative is every year I've tried to at least offer some sort of legislation that has to do with adult education. So if you can find a friendly legislator to offer something so that adult education is being discussed every year, not just on budget years. So and I can usually get something passed through. And every time that we do this, I also put the legislation into the governor's office for a ceremonial signing of the bill, so that again, we get in front of him again, so that he's reminded and the legislators are reminded about adult education. And so like tomorrow, I asked him if we could do we passed one adult education bill this year, and it wasn't a funding bill, so it was good. We had discussions in both chambers. And then tomorrow we're doing a ceremonial signing in his office, so we'll bring it up, like it'll be in again. We'll talk about it again, and we invite people to that. And then we'll do a press release. So like us as legislators, we like press releases, and the governor likes press releases. And then it also is getting adult ed talked about again. So if you can find a friendly legislator for adult ed that will at least introduce something so that it can be looked at, talked about, get some hearing, get some discussion, I think that's been helpful to us.
I'm going to ask a question of you.
Yeah.
Can you give an example of like a non-funding policy?
Yeah. So this year this bill, it actually extends, I'm going to say this, a pilot program where we have 2 adult education programs that are tied to high schools, and if a student in high school is in their senior year and they have 10 high school credits or less, so they are not on track to graduate, then they can move to an adult education program. And again, it's a pilot, so we only did it with 2 adult ed programs. They can move into the adult ed program and work through the adult ed program to get their GED, right? Yes, GED or high school equivalency. And yeah, she's one of the programs. That's why I'm looking at her. So that pilot program was going to expire. And so we just extended it 2 years. So we had a whole discussion about adult ed just to extend a pilot program. The other piece that we added in there that DWD decided they wanted at last minute was for the 16 and 17-year-olds who aren't enrolled in high school anymore, who come to us, we are just adding a component of a career exploration with their GED or the high school equivalency that they're taking, so we made that mandatory. So again, we talked about adult ed again, and that wasn't anything funding related. Good question.
Any other questions?
I don't think I need the mic though.
It's for our virtual audience.
Oh, for your virtual. Sorry. Okay, this is really for Representative Davis and Heather because you're from red states, and I'm from a red state,
Okay.
Missouri. And my question to you is, we're finding it difficult to start conversations because we're finding that the response that we get when we ask to meet with people is a partisan. How do you get away? I mean, I know adult education is not a partisan issue, but how do you move it off the mark when the legislators see it as a partisan issue? Because we're just having a lot of trouble with that, with our local. This is with Missouri State.
Well, maybe because I'm a hard Republican that I don't have that problem in my state house, because I'm the one offering most of the adult education legislation. So I think you can always go back to talk about the money, but like somebody said, that we are creating taxpayers and we are giving them industry recognized certifications. So we're making them employable so that they are gainful citizens. But I haven't really seen that. If anything, I usually have Republicans on all my bills and not Democrats. So
Yeah, you guys are kind of a weird red state.
I'll take it.
Indiana's kind of a weird red state. I mean, I would say a more progressive Republican state, I would say.
Okay.
Because I'm in Missouri. And so, and what you said is true, and we do try to kind of talk about the money and the tax and that kind of stuff. It's just we're getting a lot of pushback on
Yes,
trying to make it partisan. I'm sure.
I understand that absolutely. Again, we're also human, and I feel like bringing the students in, it's about people. and trying to build that unity to understand the impact of what our work is doing and the good things that's coming from raising our taxpayers and contributing back to self-sufficiency so that we can have a better opportunity for everyone. But I try to keep the politics out of it because at the end of the day, we're human and it's about real people. And I try to keep that. That's where I go from there.
I'll also say, I know I'm not from a red state, but I participate in a lot of the congressional meetings, and from just the full spectrum of Republican, Democrat, Independent, and you can always ask questions, right? Like, you can always ask that legislator, like, what's holding you back from this? Like, what are your concerns? What are your priorities? And when you get them talking about what they care about, then you can tie in how adult education is actually aligned with what they care about. And that it might be that a misperception of what adult education is, and no offense, it might just be a cranky legislator, right? Like, sometimes people are people, and I've had fantastic conversations with Democrats, Republicans, Independents, but I've also had conversations on both sides where I feel like I'm not being listened to, where student stories are being dismissed, and then I know that's not my in, right? So I think don't be opposed to asking, to an actual conversation, and not just like, okay, this is what we do, here are the facts, here's a story. Dig into, like, it's that Socratic questioning, like, dig into what they care about, and then you're like, now I am forming my strategy. Like, okay, now I can teach to what you care about.
I would also say, perhaps maybe this is more on the federal level, but jobs, jobs, jobs. I mean, that is what you hear that from the president on down. Like, that is what we need to get America, to keep America great, or whatever slogan you want to have. I mean, it's very important that we have people with skills that can compete globally, that can take on the jobs that are right there available right now, that every employer everywhere is saying they don't have the skilled employees. I mean, I think if you can partner with some of your local businesses and have them come and make the case with you, make the case for you, in essence, because if they're looking for people for these jobs and there's no one in your local community who could take them because all the kids who have college degrees and advanced degrees have moved away, and what is left are people who don't have the literacy levels, they don't have digital skills, they don't have numeracy, they can't take on those jobs. I think sometimes your local employers might be able the ones who make that best case for you.
Yeah, because they're also going to say things that are not reflected in our MSGs, right? Our MSGs are very restrictive, and I think that's, we've heard that, like, oh, what are the success rates? And it's, well, we can't look at just that. So you bring in that employer who says, I get employees directly from adult education, and guess what? I've kept them. Like, they stay. And, at least where I am in my rural area, most of my state legislators are small business owners, right? That's what gives them the flexibility to be able to also be a legislator. And so that matters to them because, goodness, they know how stressful it is to have to keep hiring people and having them trained, and how that, stops progression of that business.
We can probably take one more and then we'll wrap up.
So I've been trying to reach all of the U.S. representatives. I haven't done the senators yet, but the representatives, and this is for Wisconsin. So we have 8 of them. And I fortunately have a meeting coming up with the representative from the area where I live. But all of the others, the other 7 in Wisconsin, have not responded to me. on their websites, you have to fill in a form to send them an email, and if you enter an address that's not in their district, you can't even submit the question. I tried. I did find the email format that they use, and I sent them all emails. One of them sent an auto reply response, but the others, no response at all. Erin kindly provided me a list of the staffers, and I emailed them, and I got no response. So I'm wondering if you have other suggestions.
Do you have other folks that you work with or can partner with that live in those communities? Because on the House side, they probably are not going to be that interested in meeting with someone who lives across the state. That's where your senators come in, because you have two U.S. senators, and they cover the whole state. So it doesn't matter where you live, as long as you live in the state, that they see you as their constituent. But if you live in one community, let's say here in Indiana, if you live in Indianapolis, but then you trying to get a meeting with some place very far away from Jeffersonville, they might not look at you. But if you could have a friend or a colleague who works in that community make that meeting request, you can join the meeting for sure. I mean, but they would be the one making the ask with their address. That might be a way to help with that.
Do you think it would be effective if they said, you know, my colleague is an advocate for the COAB, da-da-da, she would like to have an appointment with you?
No, they would have to ask for the meeting themselves with you
Okay.
perhaps joining.
Okay.
And maybe you can pair up with, you have adult education programs throughout your state, and there's someone else you can join up with that maybe Erin can help connect you with.
Yeah, and so I'll also ask, when you prefaced it, were you prefacing it as working for a particular program, or as a COAB state advocate for adult education fellow? Okay, because I also found when I was a SAFE, I started by reaching out and saying, I'm Erin, I work in this program, because my program said, my community college was like, yeah, as long as you're, I think we can trust you, Erin, not to say anything that you shouldn't, but also report back to us what you say. But as soon as I joined the board of my state association, as soon as I joined their advocacy committee, and I was able to say, I am part of the Illinois Adult and Continuing Educators Association, and we represent adult education programs across the state of Illinois. The response rate, I got in 1 month, I had 35 meetings with state representatives. I had not been able to get any meetings prior to that, but when they saw that Illinois, when they saw that it was their state, that worked really well. At the congressional level, it worked to have COAB and the state association. So really, that's the power of contacting your state association, ensuring there's that unified voice, because legislators know they don't know that we're not a union, but they know who unions are, right? They know that, and they know the power. There are a lot of associations that do have a lot of money, and they have lobbyists, and they have that collective impact. They're not Googling IASA to see, so yeah, and I'll connect with you on that as well. But that unified voice is so vital.
And that's where knowing the email address of the person in the office is a better way to go than through the template on the website, which is very much restricted by zip code.
Yeah, so if you all come to Flood the Hill, or if you're ever in DC, walk in, I do this each time, walk into every single office for your state, because you just walk in. I didn't know that. There are these huge wooden doors. They look pretty imposing, but you're meant to walk in. Walk in, say, who's your education staffer, who's your appropriation staffer. They'll point out the cards. I take the cards. I say, thank you. I take some candy, and then I leave. And I hop my way across, right? And by doing that, I actually did run into 2 congressmen who had been called to vote, and so they were walking out of their offices while I was taking that, and I had the impromptu conversation. So I keep all those cards. Again, turnover, sometimes it doesn't work, but when you're there, take advantage of that and grab them.
Thank you so much for our panel. Let's give them a round of applause. We're going to shift into gear, and I'm going to pass things over to my colleague, Juliet.
Thanks, Elise, and thank you again to our panelists. I think this was very informative and helpful. And now it's our time to turn it to the audience to call you all to action now that you are experts and have heard all of this information. And so we have a few actions here that we encourage you to take. First is visiting Elise and I at a booth tomorrow. We will be in Griffin Hall where the exhibits all are. If you have any burning questions that we haven't answered or any congressional, federal level questions that we can help you understand, I know it's pretty tricky to understand the way legislation works. So we will be there from 10:30 to 12 p.m. tomorrow. And we also, beyond that, encourage you to monitor for advocacy actions in the public policy pulse that comes out monthly, as well as the connects and social media, including LinkedIn, as Aaron had earlier noted. Again, we invite you to invite your state and federal legislators to visit your programs. You heard today how impactful that is, as well as scheduling a meeting with your legislators, using the toolkit to see how you can go about that. We've heard it's a bit intimidating, and once you dive in, I think it can really start to break down what you need to do on the state and federal levels. And then beyond that, we encourage you to utilize social media. I think we all know we live in a tech-heavy world, and people are utilizing social media to get their message across, including your congressional members. And so making sure you're tweeting to them in a mindful and respectful way. We often at COAB provide templates and tweet templates that you can utilize to engage with your members online. And lastly, attend COAB's Flood the Hill event during AFL week during September 17th to the 18th. That's when you come into DC and we're able to walk around the Hill and have these congressional meetings. So if you're able to attend, we encourage you to come to the swamp, as people say. And beyond that, we have some steps you can actually take right now before you leave this room. The first and most important being urging your senators to sign the fiscal year 2027 funding letter. So this is circulating in the Senate right now. This will help push the message that we want funding for adult education increase. So we encourage you, most importantly, to scan that QR code and send that. It should take 3 clicks. And then in the middle here, you can request a meeting with your House representative. And then on the right side, you can find the toolkit, this storytelling worksheet that we provide that can help you really put together your pitch and your story when you run into legislators or when you have these meetings. And then you'll also find the AFL Week interest form on there. With that, I want to once again thank our panel and close us out. And thank you all so much for being here. I hope you gained a lot from this. And hopefully we see you tomorrow at our booth. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed the rest of your day. And thank you.
And I see everybody doing those 3 clicks. We have stickers that say, I clicked. Over by the exhibit hall at the COAB booth. So after you complete that 3 clicks, go get your sticker, right? It's like the I voted. Yeah. Make sure everybody knows. And if they say, what is that? Oh, yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.